Well, I just remembered that I still haven't gotten around to fixing the loose guard on the scimitar, so I figured it would be a good idea for a video. This may help a few of you, especially considering how common of an issue a loose guard is in sword reproductions, especially budget-priced ones, but even in the mid-range, it is still a very common ailment. So quite often, as soon as you start using them for test cutting, the impact and vibrations just make the guard work itself loose. Now, especially if all they rely on for the fit is the compression of the handle, and the wood changes over time, or it may compress further and then you have a bit of a gap. In this case, it's a little different. This really relies mostly on the tight fit here. So this part needs to be supported by the grip, and you can see hopefully the gaps there. I'll bring it a little closer. You can see here, there's a bit of a gap between the guard and the grip. That's what allows it to shift around. And it could also be tighter in here between the blade and the guard. So I'm going to address that. First, I'm going to get some glue in here to fill in that gap to make that a little tighter, and then I'm going to shim this part. I'm not going to say too much about this. All I'm doing is mix up a bit of epoxy, and now I'll try to get as much in there as I can, and then just wipe it off the grip afterwards. Some people also use epoxy for the guard, so they just drip it down where the gap is, and that's a way to do it. That can work quite nicely. I'm going to do it a different way, but if you like, you can do that too, or Loctite. Some people have used that as well. So there are different ways to handle that. Just in this specific case here, with this construction, it's good to fill that in. I'm going to get a needle as well to get that a little deeper in there. It already seems to be seeping in fairly nicely, but I'm just going to help it along a little bit with the needle. And then, of course, wiping off the excess. Okay, now on to filling the gap between the guard and the blade. Now you could also reverse these two steps. I don't think it matters a whole lot. And there are several ways in which you can do that. Some people like to cut a bit of leather and drive that into the gap. I'm going to use the small wooden wedge. And this is also what has been done in historical times. There are original swords found that have a wooden wedge under the guard to secure it. Now, ideally, you would wrap the blade and put it in a vise. I don't actually have a vise, so I'm just going to put my foot down on the blade to keep it in place. Don't worry, I'll watch for the edge. And yeah, then you just stuff it in, and then you can use either a screwdriver or whatever other tool. I'm just going to use this piece of metal here and a mallet, and then just get it in there. Pretty simple. Make sure that it doesn't shift too much. Now, if you can't find anything that fits in that tiny space, you could just grab an X-Acto knife, because that's most definitely going to be thin enough. If you want to be extra thorough, I suppose you could wrap it in one layer of electrical tape, for example, to make sure you don't scratch up the metal. But again, then it might not fit. So this definitely does fit. And then you can just gently tap it, emphasis on gently, with the mallet, and that should do it. And there you have it. So now the guard is completely tight, nothing moves, And see the epoxy in there. Cleaned up the excess and it's all good. So if at some later point it starts to loosen up again, you can either drive in another wedge, or you could also try to drip some oil into the gap. So if the wood soaks up the oil and swells up a little bit, that may help if it's just a little bit loose. So yeah, still a little bit of a gap here. I mean, if you want to be perfectionist about it, you can totally fill that too, and I might. But for now, it's definitely not loose anymore, so that's the important part. And I hope you found it helpful. So, thanks for watching.